Today on Doomed, we did it. We got through 2 nights of Democratic debates on CNN. 20 people in total. And you all joined me last night with the good folks over at the Bad Praxis podcast to talk about night 1 with Bernie and Elizabeth Warren and a bunch of moderates and centrists. Now, join me to discuss night 2 with Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, Bill de Blasio, Julian Castro, Cory Booker, Michael Bennet, Tulsi Gabbard, Andrew Yang. Is there anyone I'm forgetting? My guest this, I can't even say evening, because we're like at midnight now here on the East Coast. Mike Figarado of the Humanist Report. Mike, thank you for joining me.
Thank you. It's really good to be back. I always have a blast dunking on the candidates and making fun of them with you. It's always a good time, Matt.
Right, Mike. For those tuning in to a post-debate show with me for the first time, Mike joined us the last debates on MSNBC, and it was a fantastic time discussing these 20 people with you that I was like, you know what? Let's do it all over again. But this time, though, I split it up. So we won't have to deal with everyone we dealt with last night. We can solely focus on only 10 people who are on tonight.
Yeah, it's tough. I probably have bags under my eyes. Like, this is a lot. 2 nights, 20 candidates is a lot. So I appreciate that you divided it because, I talked about, the first night on my show. And then tonight is really interesting. So I'm curious to get your take because I'm all over the place because I kind of feel like the candidates were all over the place in terms of like winners, losers. I think there was, there were clear losers. In terms of winner, that was a little bit more subjective, a little bit more tricky, but we'll hash it all out.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. It was, last night there were clear sides. It was Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren versus the moderates. And the moderates last night were much more moderate than the moderates tonight. Mm-hmm. I guess if you want to carve out Joe Biden, but I'm talking about like the low level moderates, not like the front runners. Because last night we had Delaney, Tim Ryan, Hickenlooper. It was just like the job squad, for those who want a wrestling reference, of the moderates teaming up against like Stone Cold Steve Austin and The Rock of leftists in Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren. So tonight, though, it was a free-for-all. It was like, I don't know if you ever watched wrestling, Mike, but tonight was like a late 90s episode of WCW Nitro where the NWO black and white team ran out, and then the NWO B team ran out, and then Lex Luger and DDP and Sting were fighting for WCW. It was just an all-out brawl. Do you follow any of my references?
I got about 0 of your references because I don't watch wrestling. But I will say, I get the point that you're making. It was really difficult to figure out what was going on. Like, after it was finished, I did my own post-debate analysis on my channel. And I just had to sit back and think, who actually won this? There was, really, I think that you can make the case that half of the candidates came out victorious. I think that there were 2 clear losers. I think that Joe Biden was a loser. I think Kamala Harris, surprisingly, was a loser in this debate, which I actually, after she performed so well at the first debate, I kind of would have expected her to come more prepared, especially like with the Tulsi Gabbard thing, because Tulsi Gabbard criticized her last week. And she should have expected some type of attack from Tulsi, but you can tell that, when her entire prosecutorial record was just laid out there, there was nothing. And it was bad, to the point where I think maybe we may see her dip in the polls. I don't know. But certainly this has got to cap that surge because that was not a good look. Joe Biden was just, it was a dogpile on him. Everyone was taking, turns taking a dump on Joe Biden, and it was great to watch.
I don't know if watching everyone take a dump on Joe Biden was so great. No, I know what you're saying though, but no,
the wording of that was a little bit.
I agree.
Iffy.
I agree with you absolutely agree with you that Kamala Harris underperformed tonight. I don't know who the winner of tonight is, but she without a doubt is the loser. And I don't take any pleasure in saying this because strategically, for me, who I like in the race, nothing would have been better for the outcomes I would have liked to have seen than for Kamala Harris to have given Joe Biden a little bit of deja vu from the last debate, and for her to have come out of this debate like she came out of the last one, owning Joe Biden. That just didn't happen. Her attacks on Joe Biden on healthcare fell flat, mainly because she isn't even defending Medicare for all.
But she was she was presented as like the standard bearer for Medicare for all, and she doesn't support it anymore. She backed away explicitly.
Right. Because no one this is the problem with the two nights and splitting up the candidates. Like, I get ratings wise, you need to take those 4 top tier candidates and split them up. It probably was worse for MSNBC to have that first debate with just Elizabeth Warren as the top tier candidate, and then the other 3 were on the second night. So CNN thought they'd do it this way. But it doesn't make any sense from a debate standpoint. You know, the whole important reason for doing these things, the real reason, not the ratings, the actual debate, to do that, because you just have this bizarre thing where you have people who are polling 17, 18, 19, 20, 30% for some people in the polls, arguing with someone who's 1%, 2%, maybe even below that. Like, it's pointless. And I get, having, and I don't even like the guy, but I get having someone like Buttigieg, or even someone who's shown consistently that, might be a little bit, but someone like a Yang has been slowly inching up. I get, throw someone out there, someone in there like that, just so, we could have a wild card. Let's see how they do. They are moving up in the polls, so they deserve to be on the stage. I get those people. But, listen, de Blasio was thankfully on the stage tonight because there needed to be a progressive voice, and I can't believe I'm saying that about de Blasio, but he played the role of the progressive tonight. And he shouldn't have been on the stage, though. The guy is under 1%. He doesn't even have 1% of the polls. I don't even remember how he got in. He got in because of some sort of weird loophole in terms of... I don't even know. I don't remember. But he's the one who knocked out Gravel, I think, who actually got 65,000 donors to donate to him.
Which makes it super frustrating because it's like, we know what the criteria is. Why are some of these candidates who definitely did not meet the criteria getting into these debates when Mike Gravel did not? Because regardless if you think he's a real candidate or not, he's not running to win. But, you set out these requirements. He met them. And then we have Steve Bullock on the stage. We have Bill de Blasio instead of Mike Gravel. It's frustrating. So, yeah, this whole healthcare debate, just in comparison with last night, was a train wreck to watch. And it was really, I think that this backfired for Kamala Harris because what was funny is she crafted this, watered down pseudo Medicare for all bill, expecting to kind of shield herself from the criticism that Bernie and Liz were taking from the centrists. They say, oh, well, you want to take private insurance away from people. And rather than just standing her ground, and saying, no, we're going to do Medicare for all. This is why it's better. She chose to try to have her cake and eat it too. And all she did was end up crafting a garbage Medicare for all bill that keeps private insurance, which defeats the whole purpose of single payer. And then on top of that, she pissed off progressives. And on the debate stage, all the attacks against her were the same attacks that were lobbed against Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren. So she didn't accomplish anything. She made everyone angry. And the problem was she was supposedly the rep for Medicare for all. And she's not. So this was a really annoying debate to watch when it came to healthcare. I mean, some people chimed in with good points. I think that Gillibrand made a phenomenal point when she kind of, took an indirect shot at Kamala by saying, look, the problem is the for-profit health insurance companies. I thought Tulsi Gabbard was great to call out Kathleen Sebelius, because Kamala Harris is trying to say, look, the former HHS secretary is saying that my plan is great, but her plan relies heavily on Medicare Advantage, which is a for-profit program, which is an industry that Kathleen Sebelius is in.
Right.
So, I mean, it's an inherent conflict of interest. And, there weren't enough voices to call that out. And we've got people like, Gillibrand to chime in and de Blasio and Gabbard. But the two main people who led this debate were Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. And that's not the real debate that we're having. I mean, you could argue Joe Biden to an extent, right? Because, there are the people like Buttigieg and O'Rourke who are repping the public option, which is what Joe Biden is, proposing currently. But, I mean, we needed someone to really unapologetically represent Medicare for all and real Medicare for all, which gets rid of private insurance companies. And we didn't get that. And it was frustrating to watch.
Absolutely. And like you brought up Tulsi, and listen, I'm not the biggest Tulsi Gabbard fan. I don't hate her like some people on the more liberal side of the Democratic Party seem to hate her. I just realize that she may be a good ally if we need to have her as an ally, but she has some very problematic positions.
There's critiques, definitely.
Right. And at the same time, if we're going to have 20 people on the debate stage, then you have to understand that some people are there to serve a purpose that's not to win the Democratic nomination. It's that simple. And, I'm sure someone like an Inslee is running to be president, but I also think a guy like Inslee, especially after seeing how great he was tonight, also understands that more realistically he's on the stage to center climate change because that's his issue. I'm not saying he's the only one to have that issue, but that he's made that his number one, his pet issue. And, that's what you got to take Tulsi Gabbard for, in my opinion. And she's out there. I don't think actually her issue is, end the forever wars, but I actually think that is not really her issue, even though that's being portrayed as it. Because she is, again, she's not someone like an Inslee who's had a history taking on climate change. She's actually had some very problematic foreign policy positions, which sort of put into question, for me at least, her commitment to actually ending the forever wars. But,
I was so pissed last week when she voted, for the BDS bill. So,
right.
Yeah, I feel you.
Right. But if she's going to go after Kamala Harris's prosecutorial history when she was AG in California, I'm going to take it because that was a great moment. She did not stutter. She did not mess up. She did not get her facts wrong. Everything she said was legit, and you can confirm it if you're a Kamala fan who doesn't want to believe it. This is all real. She has a very problematic background from her time as Attorney General in California. I believe some of the things Gabbard brought up were the marijuana arrests under Kamala. How when she was asked about if she ever smoked marijuana, she basically took it as a joke and and laughed about it. She tried to stifle information that could absolve a man who was on death row, and the courts had to basically force her to not hide this information. It's stunning to see that Tulsi had to be the one to step up to bring this up. I mean, I get why Biden couldn't, but where was Booker? Where was anyone else, really?
Yeah, and you can tell that Tulsi, she legitimately ran out the clock. She had a longer list because Kamala's record is really bad. She intervened to stop a trans inmate from getting gender confirmation surgery. There's a number of things. So Tulsi probably could have gone on for 2 minutes. And what was really weird is that the response that Kamala had was just to kind of laugh and be awkward. And I don't know if you saw, because I know you were doing recordings for your channel after the debate, but she was interviewed by CNN after the debate, and they asked her about that moment, and she basically changed the subject by bringing up that Tulsi is a Assad apologist. I saw that right when I was actually going to message you, and then I retweeted. I'm like, oh, come on. That's what Tim Ryan said about Tulsi, too. It's okay, if your response is to avoid the criticism that was lobbed against you and just go to like this random smear that is not persuasive at all, you've lost. And look, at that January CNN town hall that Kamala Harris had, there was an audience member that asked her about her criminal justice record, and she didn't answer it in a very persuasive manner then either. You would have thought by now someone who's this charismatic, who's this rehearsed, she would have come up with a response. The fact that she hasn't is honestly baffling. Like, I think it shows me that she's not as strong as I thought she was after seeing her in that first debate. I mean, she has her strengths, but she certainly has her weaknesses. And this criminal justice record is her Achilles heel. You can talk about all these wonderful things that you did. Nobody's saying that her record was 100% bad. But what we are saying is there are some very big red flags that we want you to explain to us, and you haven't done that. You've run away from criticism, and it's just not a good look. Like, she's not winning anybody over when she just laughs or, pivots away when this is brought up. Like, we need answers.
Also, the whole point of these debates is to reach out to the people who aren't in the political bubble that you and me are, and 99% of politics Twitter is in. The point of these debates is to reach out to people who are watching television tonight and going, oh, let me tune in and see. I haven't really been paying attention to the race. Let me see who's doing what and who these people are. A good portion, I'm going to assume, I'm sure if I find data and pull it up ratings-wise, I'm sure it'll back me up. A good portion of people tune out before it ends, I'm sure, but I'm sure a lot of people are gone the second it's over. So to bring these things up, not on the debate stage, as lame as a response it is, it's still a response that, for the whole political theater of it, might win some people who aren't all that policy-oriented. To just have that in your back pocket for the post-debate panel seems weak to me too.
It's honestly baffling because she's made some missteps, right? Her Medicare for All flip-flops have been it's really been embarrassing. But I mean, you'd think that she would have prepared for something like this. This is her one thing that she absolutely must explain. The fact that she has no, explanation, I think maybe I overestimated her because I mean, her performance last time was just spectacular. I don't think anybody would, deny that she was the clear winner of both nights. But I mean, this time, when you start to surge in the polls, eyeballs start to get turned to you as you are viewed as a front runner. That's when you're going to have to, anticipate these types of attacks. Go ahead.
You know what I think hurt her? She was not prepared. Like you said, the attacks, but I also think on top of the attacks aimed at her, she was not prepared for the amount of time they would spend on her. That's right. What I was thinking, because I don't remember all the people who were on the stage with her for the MSNBC, NBC debate, but I do remember that Bernie was on stage with Biden and Kamala, which means that at the very least, the time was split between the three of them for the most part as the front runners, which means she was able to get in that quick snipe at Biden last time and get out, and they would have had to go to someone else and not just go back and forth between Biden and Kamala. Mm-hmm. That's what happened this time. And she may have been able to hit him once the first time, but then he would rebut her, and they'd go back to her, and she wouldn't be ready for it. And, I don't think Biden performed well, but I think Biden was better than her. So in the instances where the two of them were interacting, he sort of came out the winner in my view.
Yeah, it depends on the situation. I think that on healthcare, you could say he was the winner because she wasn't defending her proposal very well. And even though he was right for the wrong reasons, I mean, he's correct when he says you're a flip-flopper on this issue. I don't know if he said that, I'm paraphrasing, but I mean, she's gone back and forth on the issue of Medicare for all. So, I mean, these are all weaknesses that are kind of being laid out now. And she knows how to play, to the crowd. She can say these lines that are rehearsed that get applause. But when it comes to really forcing her, into a corner and getting her to defend herself and, just take a strong stance, she's not good at like just being, these off the cuff things. Like you have to be able to adapt. And she did not adapt during this debate. And it showed, and it was bad. Like, here's the thing about why she needs to speak to her criminal justice record. Like, didn't Donald Trump sign the criminal justice bill that Cory Booker, was pushing for last year?
Right.
So what is if she's against Donald Trump, what is Donald Trump going to do? He's going to replicate the strategy that he used in 2016, and he's going to try to outflank Kamala from her left, and Trump will bring all of this up. Now, of course, nobody believes that Trump has any street cred here, but it's going to help him win the debates. Like, it's just she's got to get better at this, and maybe there's no explanation because these are just indefensible positions, so you can't defend them. But I mean, you've got to try. Doing more than just laughing or changing the subject is probably going to be a key to her survival.
Right, and then there was a whole portion of the debates where she just disappeared. Like she. Weirdly enough, actually, it was when they spoke about the criminal justice system for a long time, and I would say like it took up a huge chunk of that first hour, and we didn't hear from her to the very end. It was almost like she didn't want to enter. I mean, well, we see why, but it's bizarre that she just disappeared for so long. It felt like I'm actually really wondering. I haven't seen it yet. Maybe I could pull it up now. The time each person spoke for, because I swear I feel like she was barely in this debate after that healthcare back and forth with her and Biden.
I believe she spoke the second most, but I absolutely hear what you're saying, because it did feel like throughout like the middle portion she was gone, and it was like when she's gone because she was such a big presence at the last debate, then something is wrong. Like for her to fade into the background, and I get it. Like once you start to surge, you do kind of have this incentive to just maintain, right? You don't have to overperform and risk, it being a disaster. You can just maintain. But she kind of set the bar relatively high, and she set everyone's expectations high, and she absolutely underperformed. And it was incredible to watch. She's not good under pressure. She can do a phenomenal job, like I said, at reciting these rehearsed lines, but in terms of debate strategy, if you can't respond well enough and quick enough to these things, if you can't be quick on your toes and think fast, you're just not going to do well. And it showed. I'd be interested to see like a week or two from now how the polls look, because I feel like if I had to guess, this certainly would cap her surge. But if she doesn't take a hit from this, I would actually be surprised.
Right. I think she will take a hit, and I don't think it's going to be a hit in a way where it's like, oh, she did bad, I can't like her anymore. I think it's just going to be like someone not even like subconsciously being like, I really enjoyed Biden in this debate, or I really enjoyed Warren in this debate, or I really enjoyed, I don't know, Booker in this debate. I like them. It's not going to be like they're negative on Harris. It's going to be they went positive on someone else, and Harris wasn't able to give a performance that held them.
Totally agree. This wasn't a death blow. Like last time I felt like she kind of gave Joe Biden the death blow. This wasn't a death blow for Kamala Harris, but I think it was probably a massive disappointment for people who were rooting for her, because, you expect a lot. You give us this amazing performance. You topple Joe Biden, and then the second debate, you already steam out. I mean, we're just getting started,
Right.
Iowa isn't for another, 180 something days away.
Right.
So, it's I'm a little bit shocked at her performance. I definitely expected more.
Right. I'm looking at the time speaking now. It seems like Biden spoke for 21 minutes, and Harris came in second with speaking for 17 minutes. But that's actually for time speaking in a debate. That gap is actually worlds apart. Like if you look at yesterday's, Bernie and Warren were literally just like seconds apart, maybe like close to a minute at most in terms of total time spoke. So yeah, she definitely disappeared for a bit. I gotta say, like, everyone else other than Biden and Harris had a good moment tonight. Like, no moment, like, you think of the two debates, you're thinking of Bernie Sanders going, I wrote the damn bill. You're thinking of Bernie Sanders throwing his hands up in the air. You're thinking of Elizabeth Warren's line where she brought up, like, I don't get why anyone would run for president in a Democratic primary to say we can't do things. Like, those are three moments off the top of my head that got press, stood out. People are still talking about them. They were big moments. I can't think of anything like that from this debate. And that's just because everyone just had good little moments. Nothing
Yeah.
that really, and it was all from the minor league candidates. I mean, Gillibrand actually, she was missing for like the first hour and a half, 2 hours of the debate, and then showed up in the very end.
And she was daydreaming when she got called on. Like, did you notice? I forgot which
Yes.
question it was, but she was like taken off guard. Like, oh, I'm here at the debate.
Right, Hickenlooper did that yesterday. I remember. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then I thought she was gonna get Biden, and then Biden made her look really bad by having an actual answer to the thing she was bringing up about his previous comments about women in the workplace and his support for God, I can't remember now. Was she the one who brought up the Hyde Amendment?
No, Kamala brought up the Hyde Amendment. I don't know what comment that Gillibrand was referring to.
Yeah, I'm not sure either, but he brought up that when they met previously, she was all gung-ho for him and was thanking him for how much he's done for women. It was just like, ow, that's not going to look good for her, actually, I think. That was a bad moment. Yang, surprisingly, first of all, kudos to CNN for not turning off Andrew Yang's mic. What I really think happened is that Yang got himself a media coach because the guy was a bit more assertive. He hit his marks. The automation thing, I get that's his thing, but he's bringing it up a little bit too much, in my opinion.
I agree totally.
And it's not the equivalent to Bernie Sanders bringing up income inequality in the 1%, because when Bernie brings those issues up, he's discussing how income inequality in the 1% is affecting, for example, climate change or affecting living wage laws or affecting healthcare. So it makes sense when he does it. The automation thing is a very specific thing we're talking about, so it doesn't really fit into there. If that's your thing, it doesn't fit into every nook and cranny like you'd like. However,
Climate change,
right,
foreign policy.
right. However, I will say that when he was asked about the issues women face in the workplace, I thought they were going to catch him off guard. From my experience of seeing him just talk about nothing but automation. But the guy actually had a good answer, and it made me think, why is he just sticking to automation if he could have good answers on these other issues? And I don't think he's going to win. And I don't think he's quite worth all the press he's getting from having a Yang Gang and being an internet meme favorite. But the guy isn't bad, you know?
Yeah, I actually, like, towards the beginning of the debate, I'm like, wow, he's crushing it. And he was brilliantly, like, linking issues to his UBI, which I think is smart. It's kind of what I expected him to do. And when I interviewed him, he kind of did the same thing. And it was endearing, right? It wasn't like a turnoff, like, oh, you're talking about this again. But then, like, towards the, third quarter of the debate, it's like, okay, you're bringing up UBI now. Like, okay, I don't need to hear about UBI, if we're talking about foreign policy.
Right.
You don't need to bring that up if you're talking about climate change. Like at the last debate, in his closing statement, he said something to the effect of, like, we can focus on climate change when we get the economic boot off people's neck. It's like, I don't like that. So, I mean, he does risk kind of becoming a one-trick pony if he keeps this up. But I think it is clever to link his UBI program to, specific policies. He just needs to be better at gauging when it's appropriate to do that. But I mean, yeah, he absolutely stepped up. His first performance was actually surprising because I anticipated that he would be relatively solid because, so long as he got the chance to rep his UBI bill or proposal, that would be sufficient for him because that's what he's trying to push. And it just fell flat last time. This time, he really stepped up, and that's probably good for him. I believe he already qualified for the September debate. Right. So it wouldn't have been make or break. But still, he needed a good night, and I think he did have a good night. You can honestly make the case that he won, but I think the over-reliance on UBI maybe would have been an issue, and I could be just, too nitpicky. But I do think that he needs to kind of diversify his platform,
Right.
because he does have a relatively robust policy platform, and he doesn't talk about other things. Like he wants to lower the voting age to 16. He supports he's gone back and forth on Medicare for all, but I mean he needs to talk about more things than just UBI. But I
Right.
mean he had a great performance, not to be too down on Yang.
Right. Right. No, I agree with all that for sure. I think he definitely stepped it up, and if he expands what he's going to talk about on the stage, I think he'll do well up until it comes time to vote in the primaries, in which he will promptly lose. There's no opening there. I mean, I will say this: as much as I think he stepped it up, and I actually agree with many of the things he was saying, and I think a UBI in some form, not his version, but a UBI in some form is a good idea. And I do appreciate the automation, bringing that to the forefront. That's his issue, because it is a big issue, just not always in the way he brings it up. But, I also think he speaks on the stage on what I'd like to hear from a Democratic candidate, and that's way too much entrepreneurship,
Yeah.
jerking off, and just filleting over small businesses and the the private sector in Silicon Valley. It's like, listen, that's not what the Democratic candidate needs to be. It's not.
Yeah.
It's just it was very reminiscent when he does that. It's very reminiscent of when John Delaney thought it'd be a good idea last night to be like, listen, no one knows the healthcare business better than me because I've worked in the business. It's like, well, that's the problem.
Yeah. He said, John Delaney said, we need a president who's a president of the public sector and the private sector. It's like, ooh, read the room, dude. Read the room.
Right.
Jesus.
But I will definitely say Yang was up there as one of the better tonight. I also thought Inslee did really well.
I agree.
I wanted to go back. Actually, Yang had an interesting line tonight, which I didn't remember the climate change line you brought up. But now, in retrospect, with both these lines, doesn't really weird that he would say both of them. But he brought up how we're 10 years too late for climate change.
Yeah,
and
that stood out to me.
And that, I mean, we very well might be, and no one really wants to bring up the pessimistic side of things, but that very well could be the case. And if that is true, we need to prepare for the fact that there's no going back, and we need to help the people who are in the danger areas.
Yeah, nobody talks about, climate change adaptation. We're all focused on mitigation, but if we want to survive the reality of climate change, which is already here, we have to, equip ourselves with the tools we need economically, institutionally, to not die,
Right.
So we have to talk about how to adapt as well. So that was a good point. I was kind of hoping that he would expand on that, but, it was good that he brought it up. We should certainly be, at least, if we're not 10 years too late, we should be acting as if that's the case, because, we can't afford to mess up on this issue. It's kind of important. And I'm glad that, I think that what Jay Inslee did was great in challenging Biden here.
Right. I just want to keep on the Yang thing for a second, because this is something I've never talked about before, because the idea really has never come up. I mean, even the banner carriers, the standard bearers of the left, modern left right now, at least politically, our elected officials, AOC, Ilhan Omar, Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren. No one's ever talked about that. What do we do if it's too late? And if Andrew Yang really wants to separate himself from the rest of the pack, he should be getting together with his policy people tonight and talk about, we should put this towards the forefront. This should be our pet issue. Let's put automation as a secondary thing we bring up. And the climate thing is really an interesting thing. And I think it would actually speak to a lot of people in the Democratic base. I really do.
Yeah. It's certainly there needs to be a bigger focus on climate change. And, thankfully tonight we actually got a pretty sizable chunk of the debate dedicated to climate change. I don't know if there's going to be a full climate change debate. I know that Tom Perez said no at first, and then maybe there's some movement there, but it needs to happen because for the most part, we've just seen this issue presented as, well, is it or is it not happening, you know? And now it's kind of moved to where, well, is it, you know, it's happening, but is it anthropogenic or is it not? And we need adults to talk about climate change, and we need everyone to watch adults talk about climate change, you know, for 2 hours. That would be really, really constructive.
Right. And you know who else had a really good night tonight? Not to segue off, but I just thought of him now, and I don't want to forget. He might actually very well be the winner of the night, I think, because he was able to really establish himself. Not just jump in and throw a good line in on specific issues. I think he established himself as a real candidate tonight, and that's Cory Booker. And I'm in no way a Cory Booker fan, but his tussle with Joe Biden went much better than Kamala Harris's one. When he specifically said to Joe Biden, when they were talking about criminal justice, he specifically said, if you want to talk about your history, I'm surprised you do. You know, it was his line was actually better. I'm spitballing it with exactly what it was, but he did well tonight, and you know, he is another one that he talks a tough game on an issue, and then you look at his own history on that specific issue, and it's like, ooh, he messed up himself on these policies. But you know, he hit Biden in ways that no one else on the stage did tonight.
Yeah, and Biden kind of inadvertently endorsed him for president as well, which was weird. I don't know if you caught that. I was just like, what? Because he said, no, what the president is saying, or what the future president, and then he like touched Cory Booker's arm, and I'm like, did you literally just endorse Cory Booker? And Cory Booker was savvy enough to like pick up on that and said something to the effect of, well, I'm glad that I got your endorsement for me as the president, or something like that. Like, Joe Biden was all over the place. Not to change the subject, but before I forget, I have to bring this up. What were your thoughts on Joe Biden 3-0-3-3-0?
Oh my God. I think it was Sam Cedar who brought up that why is nobody talking about this in the post-debate shows? If Bernie Sanders said that, he would be eviscerated. They would be talking about he's so old, he doesn't know what a website is, he doesn't know what a text message is. It clearly shows that his age is a factor. He needs to get out of the game or something like that. It was just full-blown ignored. And it was just so weird. Like, he was clearly reading something. I don't know, the teleprompter or something. I guess they're allowed to read from a teleprompter for their closing statements.
Oh, huh.
But he was looking at something, clearly looking at something, because otherwise, what would that even mean, what he said? You know, that's not something you just misremember. That's something you read and misread as you're saying it live on the air.
And it's join, not Joe, which you text to that number. It's like, how do you like botch that bad?
Right. And the weird thing is that a bunch of people went out there and like started registering the domain name, like joe30330.com, joe3030.com, which is, you know, go for it. If you could grab a viral moment out of that and get some traffic to whatever your cause is. I think someone is forwarding one of the domains to like a joke presidential run site. Another one is forwarding it to Pete Buttigieg's website, which in my opinion is a complete waste of that domain. But he didn't even say .com, because that's not what it was. Like there's no one realized, like, if it would be one thing if he was like joe3030.com. Weird that, you know, you wouldn't realize that what the hell is 3030 when you're running for 2020. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But then on top of that, it wasn't even that. It wasn't Joe3030 either. It was Joe30330. But then on top of that all, it wasn't even a .com. There was no .com. So he goes, go to Joe30330. And it was, what? Like, what is that even? And then you go online, you find out, like you said, it's a text message prompt. You text 30330. You text the word Joe to that number. But again, it wasn't Joe. It's join. So we got like every facet of it wrong.
It was so bad. It was so bad. And yeah, like you said, that's such a good point. Or kudos to Sam Cedar for bringing it up. Yeah, because if Bernie did that, of course they would be pouncing on him, because nobody talks about Joe Biden's age. It's always about Bernie's age. Is Bernie too old? Pete Buttigieg, do you think that Bernie Sanders is too old? But nobody brings it up when it comes to Biden. Nobody does.
Right. And with Biden, there are moments where he is clearly having elderly moments, to be honest with you.
You can tell, yeah, you can
Yes.
tell.
Yes. Whereas Bernie is, I've not noticed any of those with him. I mean, he's still as sharp as ever.
Mhm.
Um,
When if we
oh,
want to talk about electability, like, do we not think that Republicans will come up with all types of conspiracy theories like they did with Hillary? Remember, like, what was it that she had
for
Parkinson's or something?
sure. There's gonna
Like,
be.
they're gonna say that about Joe Biden. Oh, he has like he's what's the when you become senile? He has he's senile. That there's something wrong with him. Like, it's just a disaster waiting to happen if Joe Biden is the nominee. A
Right. Right.
disaster.
Well, I don't know if you realize, but um, if you notice when they do these attacks on people, it's always that, and this actually goes for sort of not all the way, because obviously even the worst of the Democrats don't go there. But let's just bring up how Joe Biden is always attacking Medicare for all, and he attacks Kamala for it. He attacks Warren for it. But when he tries to attack Bernie for it, he can't. He just goes, I gotta hand it to Bernie. He's honest about what it is, or gotta hand
Yeah.
it to Bernie. He knows what he's talking about when it comes to Medicare. Obviously, he then brings up how he doesn't agree with it, but at the same time, it's like you can't attack Bernie because from that angle, because there's no way to do it. And what I was gonna say is that if you notice when like Trump attacks Bernie, other than the nickname Crazy Bernie, because they are trying to say his policies are crazy, there's never really been an attack on Bernie from the right in terms of like he's unfit physically. It's just they are brutally petrified of his actual policies.
Mm-hmm.
There's no
I've
like
noticed that.
fake Bernie health scares. There's none of that ridiculousness.
Which is actually kind of refreshing. Like, I'm sure it would come up if he's the nominee. Like, I'm sure that there would be
Oh, they'll
conspiracy
try for
theories.
sure.
But like, yeah, Bernie, I think he just does such a good job at like being energetic and whatnot. And like, I feel like he has more energy than young people. And he always says it, people, reporters can't keep up with me on the campaign trail. So it's good. Like, if you are going to be running for president and you're that old, you definitely want to present yourself as someone who has it together. You have it all there, right? Like, no Joe 3030 moments, because that's going to be a recipe for disaster. I mean, Republicans are going to do whatever, so I'm not really too worried about their attacks. But like, I don't know. I guess the point about the double standard between Joe and Bernie is what bothers me. But to your point about Joe Biden not really attacking Bernie, I hadn't noticed that before. How he kind of, it is like he handles Bernie with kid gloves, and I think Trump does the same as well. And I believe what this is Bernie Sanders just, he knows his shit. Like, even Elizabeth Warren, she can speak intelligently about Medicare for all and whatnot, but I mean, she only kind of recently unequivocally said Medicare for all before kind of waffling back and forth. So Bernie has the consistency, and he can speak knowledgeably about these things because he wrote the damn bill. So I think that they're intimidated because Bernie is just, he's raw, he's authentic, and that does come across. Like, people, if you are debating Bernie, you do need to have your facts straight, and you need to be able to make it seem as if you're coming from a good faith position. But Bernie is trusted. He's the most popular politician in America for a reason. So it's tough. He's kind of like, taboo in this election. You don't want to go after him because it could be a disaster. It's a gamble.
Right, and it's incredible how he gets ignored by the media when they're talking about this stuff. And there was no better example. There's 100 great examples, but no better, very relevant example is than the fact that I was watching the CNN post debate stuff, like I was just talking to you about before, and they were bringing up Elizabeth Warren over and over again as, they need all the top tier candidates on the stage next time. They need to have Elizabeth Warren up there with them. They just wouldn't bring up Bernie's name. I'm sitting there going, are you guys kidding me? Are you really going to talk about the candidates from last night and not act like Warren was any better than Bernie? Like, personally, I thought Bernie was better than Warren last night, even though they were both great. But at the very least, the calculation it can't be anything other than the fact that Bernie and Warren both killed it last night, equally at the very least. So how you could bring up Warren in that sense and not also bring up Bernie, it's very purposefully. That's the only way.
Yeah, totally. And you know what? We're kind of seeing like the media's love fest with Elizabeth Warren. This is my sense, and this is all speculation because I'm not in their heads. I'm not in these production meetings. It seems like they really want all the Bernie people to transition to Warren, get all the progressives behind one candidate who is a little bit more appealing to, everyone. Like Warren is not going to be as strong on issues like healthcare as Bernie Sanders, or maybe she will. Maybe she'll prove me wrong. But Bernie just has more consistency there, so he's more stronger. He's the bigger threat overall to the status quo and the establishment and whatnot. But once, if they can successfully do that, then they will turn their attention to Elizabeth Warren, try to bring down Elizabeth Warren and get people to go for the next best progressive, Pete Buttigieg or Kamala or whoever. So I feel like this is all purposeful. Like they are intentionally excluding Bernie Sanders because he's the real threat, and he still really is the number one preferred choice among progressives.
Right. And we've talked about, who have we talked about? We brought up Tulsi, brought up Gillibrand, we brought up Kamala, Inslee, we briefly touched upon, Yang, Booker, Biden. We don't need to talk about
my list here.
We don't need to talk about Bennett, really. I guess. I mean, he I guess. He had a great line actually, and I can't remember what it was.
Did he?
He did actually. I feel
like I just tuned out whenever he talked.
Oh, it was when he brought up why are we talking about segregation issues from 50 years ago when we're dealing with those same type of segregation issues today. He said that.
Was a good. Okay. Yeah. That was a good line. Yeah.
If he was like the more moderate one on this stage, then he was considerably, again, not considering Biden as the front runner. He was actually to the left of all the moderates last night at the first debate. But yeah, he sort of falls into the background. De Blasio. I know I briefly brought him up. He sort of took it upon himself to hold the progressive mantle tonight. I appreciate him constantly bringing it back to Biden. If it wasn't for him, a lot of those moments probably wouldn't have happened because he would consistently go hit Biden whenever he got a chance, which would then force other people to bringing up issues against Biden too. Hurts him a lot that the fact that one of the major protester moments of the night was over the fact that the police officer, Daniel Pantaleo, who killed Eric Garner via the chokehold, the NYPD banned the chokehold, is still working for the force, which is just ridiculous.
Insanity.
And just unforgivable and hurts any credibility he has. Also incredibly weird to see such New York-centric issues being brought up obviously it's not completely New York-centric in the broader sense, police brutality, and then the lead issue, but specifically bringing up the Eric Garner case, and then NYCHA, public housing in New York. Very weird to see talked about at a Democratic presidential national debate stage. But de Blasio being there made it get brought up, I guess. It was bizarre.
Yeah.
And then the last person we haven't spoken about. I when he jumped in, I got where he was going. I thought maybe he could get some momentum. I thought maybe he could be up there with a Buttigieg or what I thought a Beto would be. But he has just bombed at every outing. I don't understand who his base is. Castro.
Yeah.
He is
See, I don't think he bombed, but I don't know. Like, I agree with you. Like, I don't know who his base is.
Like, he's done nothing to set himself apart. I get that his pet issue is immigration. Totally great issue to have as your pet issue. Completely
and he's great on that.
Right. Completely commend him on it. But I almost feel like even when he's talking about it, he's not, he's not Bernie talking about Medicare for all. He's not Elizabeth Warren talking about breaking up the big banks. He's not Kamala Harris talking about, maybe not the best person to bring up passionate about specific issues, but let's bring up her very impassioned speech to Joe Biden at the last debate. I don't get that vibe from him on immigration. he's just not getting across that, like, this is my thing and I know a lot about it and I'm passionate about it. Clearly he is, but he's just not showing it. And I don't know what his positions are on anything else, which is, I get, again, everyone has their thing, but even in Andrew Yang, we heard a more rounded policy platform from him tonight than we did from Castro. I don't know what Castro's running for other than his immigration issues.
Yeah, two things about that. First of all is I think he's trying to be like Obama light, but there's already two other candidates who's trying to compete to be the next Obama, Pete Buttigieg and Beto O'Rourke. They have that, the same Obama type of cadence down, that type of centrism. And so I don't think he does as good of a job as someone like Pete Buttigieg as being, the next Obama, as that smart, wonky guy. You know what I mean? Second thing is the problem with him is that he's not the only one who's passionate about immigration, even if it's his issue and his go-to issue. Other candidates do a relatively good job at speaking about that. Like when Yang talks about UBI, nobody else talks about that. When Tulsi Gabbard brings up foreign policy, nobody really talks about regime change wars in the way that she does, excluding, Bernie Sanders. When Jay Inslee talks about climate change, he really does a great job, and he does set himself apart from other people who care about climate change. But when it comes to, Castro, the issue of immigration, like everyone can do a good job at condemning what we're seeing, children in cages. So it's just, he picked a lane, but everyone else can kind of play in that same lane and do a relatively good job. Now, he does have some standout moments, like when he called out Beto at the first debate for not wanting to decriminalize, crossing the border. I thought that was great because it really sets himself apart as to why he's different here. But in terms of just overall making this his go-to issue, he just isn't that different from the other candidates who are good on this issue. And I think that's part of the reason why he's not really surging. And part of it is, like, he just, I don't know, he's not as charismatic as the other centrist type of candidates. Like, everyone who is a centrist is kind of going for Pete Buttigieg right now because he's the, this wonky dude. He speaks like 32 different languages. So they're all kind of infatuated with that. So there is, there's that lane. And then there is the Amy Klobuchar lane of centrist. Not that I would necessarily put Julian Castro in that same category, but she's kind of like the centrist who is, a little bit nicer, less belligerent than someone like John Delaney who attacks Bernie Sanders and whatnot. So I feel like there's not really, it's hard to categorize Julian Castro. He's just, like the rest of them, he's kind of a booker, but not as good of a booker,
Right.
It's tough.
Yeah. Beto jumping in the race, even as disappointing as Beto has been in the polls and everything, it took away a lot of Castro's Texas base support.
Yeah.
I think I just saw a poll from Texas specifically. Beto is doing fairly good in Texas in terms of polling. And obviously that takes from Castro, who I can't even remember what position he was in on the poll, if they even showed him.
Yeah.
It's just I often, honestly, I forget that he's even running.
Yeah.
And I remember even the most, I know Marianne Williamson's running. I know Andrew Yang's running. I know some of these other guys who you'd forget are running. But, Castro is just not. I can't put my finger on it, but it's weird to see someone who jumped in with such, it's almost like another Beto, but weirder because, Castro was a wild card where he could have pulled it off, whereas everyone else was sort of just like, Beto is coming in with a little bit too much heat, thinking he's going to transition from Ted Cruz's opponent to super popular Democratic presidential candidate.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's weird. It's weird.
Maybe if the field thins, like, he could stand out, but I think he's going to be one of the first cuts. Eric Swalwell dropped out, and by September, the field is going to probably, be trimmed down because to qualify, you need 130,000 individual donations, 400 from each state, I think. You need to poll at 4%. So a lot of these candidates will, they're not going to make the cut.
Right.
So I don't know.
What are we thinking? Who's going to be on the next debate stage? It's definitely the top 4 tier candidates are definitely in. You got Biden, Kamala, Bernie, Warren.
Mm-hmm.
I'm assuming Buttigieg.
Yeah, I'm assuming him too.
I'm assuming Beto.
Yeah.
I think Yang could pull it off.
I think Yang will be because he did meet the individual donor threshold. I don't know that he's reached 4% in the polls yet.
There was a poll that they just disqualified, so he can't use that poll.
Oh, seriously?
Yeah, they told that apparently he was under the assumption he was in, and then they disqualified the poll.
Why did they disqualify it?
I don't know. I think it was like one of those weird polls that there's a lot of. I don't know if you looked at some of these weirder polls that don't get reported on as much. Like they're not like the Seneca or the Quinnipiac or whatever these polls are. I'm too tired to remember the names of the ones I'm naming. But there's some really random polling out there, and some of the things were really. There was one poll I saw that has Warren leading everybody, even Biden, and I looked at how they got this from, and it was targeted online advertisements asking people to click through to a survey poll.
What?
And it's like you can't do that. You can't do that because all you're saying is, and this bodes. I can't believe Warren's base would be the type to do this. But all you're saying is people who fall for online advertising are going to vote in this poll. That's this bad polling criteria, if you ask me. But I'm not Nate Silver though, so what do I know?
Yeah, he's the only one who could talk about polls. Otherwise, be in trouble. But no, I heard, now that you bring up that poll with Elizabeth Warren, I heard CNN talk about it, just like it was in one of those like flash briefings on the Amazon Echo devices. And I thought, oh, that's weird, but I didn't really think much about it. But yeah, there's really, looking at aggregate polling data is always the safest bet. But in terms of like these candidates, there's so many that, I think it would behoove some of these centrists, if they care about the radical centrist cause, to drop out, so that way support can kind of consolidate behind like maybe one or two centrists. Because do we really need 12 different centrists running who all look the same?
Right. Well, first of all, there's people who should just drop out now. Like, there's no purpose. Yeah. You're not going anywhere. Tim Ryan, get out. Hickenlooper, get out.
John Delaney.
Well, I do enjoy having him there as the goofy villain.
I hate him.
You got to go,
Homer
buddy.
Simpson.
You got to go, buddy. So
Steve Bullock.
You got to. It was his first time on the stage too, but you got to go. You're not going anywhere.
I do want De Blasio just to move that Overton window. I don't think he's gonna make the cut though.
No, De Blasio, buddy, get back to New York. What are you doing? Yeah. You want to be a progressive? You run the biggest city in the country. You can make incredible reforms right here in New York City right now. Why aren't you doing it? Like, he talks a big game, but I can tell you as a New Yorker, he has not followed through. There's one really good thing he's done, in my opinion, and that's universal pre-K. And then in every other aspect, he's been a big disappointment. Mm-hmm. And so you got to go home, buddy. Come back to New York. There's literally major parts of the city flooding as if a hurricane hit it every time there's been a little bit of rain this summer so far. So you gotta you have a responsibility to us, De Blasio.
Yeah.
And then who else? I don't know about Tulsi. I can picture her staying in and getting a little.
I think she just crossed the 100,000. If I had to guess, I'd say she's gonna make the third debate. Another one that I'm kind of thinking is probably going to qualify is Booker.
Oh, Booker will probably qualify, right? Listen, I actually want just some of these no chancers to take anything from anyone vote-wise away to get out, just so there's less time for them on the debate stage. Mm-hmm. But in reality, I want as many legit candidates in this race as possible when it comes to voting, because we're going to see a primary unlike any other. I'm already seeing people talk about, will Bernie drop out when he wouldn't last time when it comes down to it? I'm telling you right now, you're going to hear that even when it doesn't make sense this time around. For real. Mm-hmm. Like, not just because you want to build a movement like Bernie was doing. I mean, literally, Bernie will still be in it and people will be calling for him to drop out because they're not going to understand the different dynamics. This is, unless someone breaks away, like unless Biden continues to have this stranglehold, which I really don't see him holding on to as forcefully as people think he will, unless that happens, this is going to be an incredibly close race where there is not going to be a winner when we get to the convention. And I think it literally will come down to the coalition building and deciding who drops out and who's going to hand who their delegates. And that's why I sort of think it's really smart for both Bernie and Elizabeth Warren to stay in this. Unless Warren is doing terrible and Bernie needs those extra votes to beat Biden, that I also don't see that happening. I think it's going to be close all around. But I want Beto in this. I want Buttigieg in this. I want Biden in this. I want Kamala in this. I want those four to be splitting each other's vote so much that, Bernie and Elizabeth Warren are just like rising on their own just from the fact that
they have a strong plurality. Like
right.
And I was worried actually, like when I saw that they were both running, I'm like, what are you guys do? Like, you're going to split the vote. You know what I mean? Like, what are you doing? But it seems like based on like polling data that they kind of have different bases, but them both being in, I do agree with your point that if they kind of consolidated, they could both come out on top, at the convention. If it is contested, which it could very well likely be the case because there are so many candidates who are like very close. Like Kamala and Elizabeth are super close. Biden, is, he's in second. He's a strong second. But, I don't know what's going to happen. And Joe Biden, I can't see him making it to the convention. And this is like, I can't say because you don't know what the hell's going to happen. But if he has a strong showing at Iowa, if he actually wins New Hampshire, that'll be disappointing. And maybe we won't see, a contested convention after all. But I think what you're saying is probably going to be the most likely scenario where there's a bunch of candidates that go in, maybe one or two of them with a big plurality, but maybe not enough to want to form like a coalition like Bernie and Liz and just have like a joint ticket. So I don't know. I don't know if that makes sense. I'm super tired as well. And my thoughts are a little bit scattered right now. But yeah, I don't know what's going to happen. I wish I had a crystal ball.
Right. It's going to be fun to watch at the very least. And hopefully no one screws it all up for us by electing someone who ends up losing to Trump, because that would be the worst case scenario. That'd be brutal.
Yeah,
brutal.
If that happens again, then it's like, how demoralized will people be? You know what I mean? Like, I can't. It's unfathomable to me. If we do the same thing that we did last time, I mean, Jesus Christ. Like, if that doesn't catalyze like party realignment, then nothing ever will. But I think that Donald Trump, he will be a little bit more difficult to beat this time because he has that incumbent advantage, and it's just a matter of how many new voters Democrats get out, how much of the base will be excited. And we all know a centrist isn't going to do that. We tried it. It's not going to work. So if Joe Biden's the nominee, it's like going to be tough. I'd say 50-50 chance that Donald Trump wins. If it's Bernie or Liz, I think Bernie probably has the best shot. Liz, I think after seeing her debate performances, I do have more confidence in her because at the beginning, like I was with that Native American stuff that she did, I was like, oh man, Liz, what are we doing? But I do believe that she actually is a lot stronger and more assertive than than I thought she would have been. So she could be a strong force. If we see like a joint Bernie Warren ticket, I think they win. I think they beat Donald Trump.
Right.
The base would be so motivated. Like we would all be just like, we'd be in love with that.
Right. I'd be worried, honestly, about the joint ticket aspect. I'd be worried about losing both of them in the Senate, especially when the Senate is where
that's true.
We're even if we win 2020, it's more likely we beat Trump in 2020 than it is we take the Senate. The Democrats.
I'm starting to see that, and I was very optimistic coming out of 2018 because I'm like, look, Republicans have to defend more seats than Democrats. It's just math. But then when you look at those seats, it's like, oh man, these are kind of safe seats. So
which is why it's really disappointing because I think Beto could have. I don't want him as president. I don't really like the guy, but he's better than any Republican in Texas. That's for sure.
Sure.
And I think I think he would have been well positioned to beat what's his face? Oh my God, I can't remember his name. It's so late.
John Cornyn.
Thank you.
See, I thought that at first, but there's somebody who's better who's running, Sema Hernandez, and she got like a really large percentage in the primary against Beto.
Right, but what I'm seeing now, there's a more establishment Democrat that's running, and she's the name I've been seeing everywhere. Not.
Oh, seriously? See, I haven't heard.
Yeah.
Of course.
Right.
Of course.
So
That's always how it is. Like if you have a progressive that's like really doing well in a particular primary, there's gonna be an establishment candidate. Like we all probably like I don't know if you remember Amy Vilela in Nevada's 4th congressional district. Basically, she challenged Ruben Kihuen, and he got Me Too'd out of the race. So she was the de facto frontrunner. And then like 4 establishment choices came in. Biden came through and endorsed Stephen Horsford. So that's always the case. And it's so frustrating to see someone with more money, well-financed,
Right.
has establishment support. It just sucks.
Right. Well, if there's a Bernie Warren ticket and they win the presidency, they win the White House, maybe I'll move to Vermont and run for Bernie's seat. Bernie's open seat, because
oh yeah,
we need someone to, we can't let any more.
I was thinking about this actually, because I'm like, after seeing that debate performance, I was thinking like, okay, how cool would it be if they were on a joint ticket? But at the same time, that leaves Merkley as the one like really solidly left person in the Senate. But it's like, at the same time, do we sacrifice the Senate? If it means we take out Donald Trump, because that means we maybe preserve the Supreme Court from, going further to the right. It's tough. And I don't know. Right. I really don't know what the answer is.
I don't see a scenario where Bernie is the vice president, but I can see a scenario where Warren is the vice president, and that would be good for her because she is younger. I know not by much, but she is young enough. I think it's like a 4 or 5 year difference, but it's significant if we're talking president. Where she could possibly run again. Whereas this is definitely going to be Bernie's 2020 is Bernie's last presidential run.
This is it for him. It's do or die right now. And I wouldn't want to be anyone's vice president if I'm Bernie. It's like I don't think Bernie even wanted to run for president in the first place.
He didn't.
Wanted Elizabeth Warren to run in 2016, and she didn't. So now it's like, okay, kind of have a movement. Let's do it. Let's give it one last shot.
Right.
So I agree.
He has the movement. Like, Warren's base is really interesting to me, and I know we're off the debates now a little bit, but maybe we'll end with this because it's getting late. But Warren's base, you said it yourself that Warren's base is not the same as Bernie's, and it's really weird to see because we would all assume that it would be. But you're seeing what it looks like is that, I said this yesterday, I think, Warren's base seems to be people who were more progressive for Hillary in 2016, who were more progressive than Hillary in 2016, but still liked her more because they had a personal issue with Bernie Sanders. I mean, that seems to be her base. I'm sure this will get me shit, I'm sure, but the cliche privileged white feminist seems to be Warren's base. The college educated, and I don't just say this, I don't just mean women when I say this, I'm talking about men too. The college educated, making around $100K or more, liberal white feminist, meaning both men and women, who look at Bernie and don't like his he's too angry.
He yells too much.
I don't like how he looks.
He's too old, and
right.
He's sexist.
But at the same time, they're on board with all of his policies.
Yeah.
It's
totally.
it's or at least most of them. It's a bizarre dynamic there, but
it's very strange, and people just are not ideologically consistent. It's very personality driven. That's what sucks about politics.
That's people. The angry thing against Bernie is I tweeted yesterday. I want to see the Venn diagram of the hashtag resistance people who post on their Facebook feed all day stories about what Trump is doing with the cliche comment, if you're not angry, you're not paying attention. And the Venn diagram of those people and people who complain on Twitter that Bernie Sanders is too angry. I'm sure it's a perfect circle.
Yeah, I really, it's such a weird phenomenon. Like, I believe Neera Tanden said something nice about Elizabeth Warren on Twitter. It's like, wait, none of this makes sense. And I think part of it is maybe them trying to overcompensate because they were all called out by progressives because they were basically centrists, Republican light. So now they're proving, no, we are progressive. We're supporting, Elizabeth Warren. It really was just Bernie, I promise you. But I don't know. It's hard, trying to psychoanalyze the resistance people, and just any political bloc is very, it's a fool's game, because who knows what motivates people. It's tough.
I'm just waiting for someone. Maybe I'll end up doing it. I think it's a little bit too early to bring it up because I still want to see. I'm going to give Warren, because I like Warren, I want to give her the benefit of the doubt here, her campaign the benefit of the doubt here. If, in 2016, Bernie Sanders was hassled nonstop for having a mostly white base and not doing well with minorities, even though that was just part of the story, because he was winning minority groups under, 35 or 40? Mm-hmm. So it was a generational gap, but still, he wasn't doing great with minority groups. But polling after polling has shown that next to Joe Biden, Bernie Sanders is the one doing best with minority groups. And actually, Warren is distant in the single digits. Yet you hear nothing whatsoever about Elizabeth Warren's African-American problem, or Elizabeth Warren's Latino problem, or Elizabeth Warren's Native American problem, talking about specifically about voting and not about DNA tests. But right. But yeah, you don't.
I didn't know about that, actually. That's really. I did not know that she was performing that poorly. Like, Warren's I knew that Biden and Bernie were,
Warren's base are college-educated white people. She's not doing well right now with in polling, at least, with minority groups. Joe Biden and Bernie Sanders are the front runners there. With I think Bernie Sanders is actually doing better with Latinos than anyone else, whereas Biden takes African Americans, and Harris is a third place, and Warren is fourth, I believe, in single digits, by the way.
Okay.
From what I've seen.
That's crazy. Yeah, I think that this just tells me that, like, name recognition is a really powerful force, because back in 2016, Bernie did do well with young African-American voters, but part of the problem that a lot of us were saying was nobody knows who Bernie Sanders is. Every single person in the country knows who the Clintons are, so right. That's going to be a big problem. It's going to be a barrier for him, in the South and whatnot. And this time around, everyone knows who Bernie is, and, if you know about the policies, about the record, then you will poll better. And, it shows. Maybe people also kind of link Biden to Obama, which is why he's doing well, but name recognition goes so far. And Warren, you'd think she'd have more name recognition, but, I mean, there's also really big names in the race. So it's hard to say, but that's interesting.
Well, you look at the polls, actually, and, people made a big deal about those polls that came out a week or two ago. There was a few truly outlier polls showing Bernie dropping to like third or fourth. But look at the polling now, and he's back up at second, because that's just what happens with the polls. It's just a weird thing. But when you look at the actual numbers, it's not that Bernie is losing support. Yes, every other poll might show that he's up 1 or down 1 or up 2 or down 2. But compared to everybody else, he's had a very consistent base. Biden will be up. We'll have 30 in one poll, drop to 20 in another, have 22 in one, and then have 28 in another. He's all over the place. Same with not as big of a gap, but same pretty much being all over the place with Kamala and Warren. The only person who's shown a consistent thread throughout has been Bernie's numbers, and obviously he's got to build on that. But to have that base that can't be swayed, it puts him in a place that no one else is in.
Yeah, everyone else has that volatility that Bernie Sanders does not, which is why, even if he's been dipping here and there, I think most of it is just other people are surging. He has been consistent, and that's really important. So this is I know that this is going to be nerve-wracking, but it's also fascinating to watch it all play out, because it's this is a fight for our lives, and we all know Bernie's the real deal. And I don't know. It's interesting. Now I'm just rambling. I'm tired, but
no, it's all good.
You know what I'm talking.
Let's actually. We're almost at 2 a.m. on the East Coast, people. So we're gonna wrap this up. Excuse me, folks.
We've both been talking too much politics.
Right. Right, folks, you could go to. Let me let you go first because it's late. Mike of the Humanist Report, thank you so much for joining me. Always a pleasure. Look forward to doing it again.
Absolutely. And if you want to learn more about me, you can go to Mike30330.
That's
I
it.
had
That's
to.
it. That's it. I'm done. I can't take it. I'm so tired, and that got me good. All right, Mike. For real though, why don't you plug your show so you could actually so people aren't ending up. Who knows? People might type in Mike 30330, and I don't know. Maybe David Pacman is listening in, or Michael Brooks, or Kyle Kalinske, and they've just registered Mike 30330,
Yeah.
and they're now
Gonna
forwarding
jump
it to their YouTube channel. Why don't you plug your actual channel?
All right, Humanist Report on YouTube. You can go to humanistreport.com, follow me on Twitter, and that's everything. I will be uploading like a bajillion videos tomorrow. I'm going to stay up pretty late editing, have lots of coffee, and try to, get it done. But yeah, it's been a blast.
All right, Mike. Always a pleasure. Take care. Have a good night.
You too, man.
Skype goes bloop bloop. All right, folks. That is the show. I'm not reading the comments tonight. I know a lot of comments tonight. I am exhausted. It's 2 a.m. Patreon.com/Matt Binder. All I ask is $5 a month. You can give more, you can give less. Patreon.com/Matt Binder. And you could be on that list of... there's no show without you, by the way, patrons. If you're listening to the show and you're not a Patreon subscriber, and you could financially afford to do so, know that the show is not possible without the Patreon subscribers. As I choke here, I'm sorry. So maybe you could become one of those wonderful Patreon subscribers. Patreon.com/Matt Binder. Join this list of wonderful people: Abigail T, Adam Q, Alan B, Andrew H, Ari R, Benji, Bobby M, Brooke H, Champagne Kami, Chi, Christine H, Colin R, Dakota R, Dan M, Dan Huger, Dave K, David Z, Dragon Slayer, Floaties, Fraz K, Francis Zek, FTW All Day, Greg D, Ian Curtis J, Jameson Test, Janelle A, Jasmine H, Jeff K, Jonathan B, Joseph R, Katie S, Katz, Kyle, Lisa D, Max W, User Me, Melissa M, Michael J, Michael M, Mr. Danks, Nicole A, Namde Net, Romina O, Ryan Left Is Best, Scott R, Stephen S, Struggle Session, TM, Tamni G, Thaddeus A, Tina M, Tom G, Tom M, Will P, Wutopian, and Zarin. You can also support this show by subscribing to the YouTube channel, youtube.com/Matt Binder. Please subscribe to the channel. That is free to do. Help me build this YouTube channel. It would be wonderful to build this YouTube channel and get it up there with all the other wonderful YouTubers who have hundreds of thousands of subscribers, because I don't have hundreds of thousands of subscribers. I would like hundreds of thousands of subscribers. I don't have them. Help me out here. Also, leave an iTunes review, a Google Play review, review wherever you listen to podcasts. Follow me at Matt Binder on Twitter, at Matt Binder on Instagram, which I've barely been using, but I'd like to use more. So follow me on there, and I'll start using it more. Can't think of anything else. So what I'll do is bid you all adieu, and I will see you all next time on Doomed.